Hi everyone, I'm Wendy and today I'm showing you how to batch prep steel-cut oats on the stovetop. Typically, I cook my oats in my Instant Pot, which I've demonstrated in a previous video. But I got a request to show the stovetop version for those who don't have an Instant Pot. So let's get right into it. You'll start with putting a large pot on the stovetop. To that, I'm adding 6 cups of water. Then we need to bring this up to a boil, so I crank up the heat and I like to put a lid on to bring it up to a boil faster. It'll take about 5 to 10 minutes depending on your stovetop. Once that's boiling, I'll add 2 cups of steel-cut oats. At this point, you can also add a little bit of sweetener if you like. In my Instant Pot oatmeal video, I added some chopped dates, and that's what I'll do here today. As the oatmeal cooks, the dates soften and break down, adding their sweetness to the whole batch. Some other whole food sweetener options would be to add in some date paste, any other kind of dried fruit you like, such as raisins or dried apricots. You could add some mashed banana, or you could even blend a banana or dried fruit with your water before adding that in. Of course, you can also leave it plain and sweeten it up at the table with a little date sugar, maple syrup, date syrup, or even regular sugar. I find that the longer I eat a whole food plant-based diet, the less I tolerate really sweet food. So lately, I haven't been putting any sweetener in my oatmeal. I just sweeten it up with fruit. But I'll get to that later. Back to our pot of oatmeal. So far, we've got the water, the oats, and the optional dates. Once you add the oats, you'll stir everything around, reduce the heat to medium-low, and simmer the oatmeal for about 15 to 20 minutes. The longer you cook it, the creamier the oatmeal gets. I tend to like it with a little more bite to it, so I cook mine closer to 15 minutes. But cook it to your desired texture and consistency, adding more or less water as needed. Another tip I have for cooking oatmeal on the stovetop is to use a very large pot. As you can see, I'm using a pot that's much larger than I really need for the amount that I'm cooking. If using a smaller pot, it's very easy to accidentally let the oatmeal boil over and make a complete mess of your stovetop. This is the reason why I like to use my Instant Pot instead, because it's completely hands-off. On the stovetop, you have to pay a little more attention, but using an extra large pot makes it a lot easier. We'll continue cooking this, stirring it occasionally. And once all of the water has been absorbed and the oats are fully cooked, you can add whatever other toppings you want with your oatmeal. This batch will last me for about 4 or 5 days, and you can add toppings now to the whole batch, or leave it plain and add toppings every day when you reheat. That way, you can change it up if you want a little more variety each day. I always like to add some pumpkin puree to my oatmeal, so I add a can in now and stir it around. I like the creaminess this adds to the texture, plus the added nutrition. Sweet potato puree is another great option. Then I also like to add either pumpkin pie spice or some cinnamon. I usually add a couple teaspoons for the whole batch. Lately, I've also enjoyed adding riced cauliflower to my oatmeal. I like the texture, and I don't really taste it at all, so it's a great way to sneak in some extra veggies. Normally, I would have added this right at the beginning when I started cooking the oatmeal, but I wanted you to see the basic oatmeal first. So I'll just add it now and let it heat through. If you want your oatmeal to be extra creamy, of course, you can also add your favorite plant-based milk. I don't usually add any milk to my oatmeal, but if you do, when you're using batch-cooked oats like this, I recommend waiting to add the plant-based milk every day when you reheat your oatmeal. When you batch cook oatmeal, you'll have to store it in the fridge, and cooled oatmeal becomes really firm. It continues to absorb any liquid as it sits in the fridge. So I wouldn't add that now. I would use the plant-based milk or some extra water every day when you reheat it to loosen the oatmeal back up to your desired consistency. So on day 1, when I've just made the oatmeal, I usually add some berries or other fruit to a bowl and simply pour the hot oatmeal over top. The heat of the oatmeal will defrost the frozen fruit. Or, of course, you could top it with fresh fruit instead. I like to stir mine all together, and then I usually add some ground flaxseed or chia seed, and that's it. Again, you can get creative and use whatever toppings you like. Add a few walnuts or a little peanut butter or other nut butter, and change up the fruit. I love to use blueberries, but I've also made my oatmeal with peaches, apples, strawberries, cherries, mixed berries, and I've even used mango to make a deliciously sweet oatmeal. Sometimes I add a little carob powder for a chocolatey flavor, and of course you could add regular cocoa or cacao. The possibilities are endless. Once I've set aside my bowl of oatmeal for the day, I transfer the rest of the batch to a storage container and allow it to cool before storing in the fridge. On days 2, 3, and 4, I simply add the oats to a bowl and microwave it. Since I usually use frozen fruit, I add that as well before microwaving. If you prefer, you could reheat it on the stovetop, and this would be the point to add your plant-based milk or a little extra water to bring the oatmeal back to its creamy consistency. Like I mentioned earlier, I like my oatmeal a little more on the firm side and I don't use plant-based milk, so I usually just reheat it as is. I love batch prepping steel-cut oats since they take a little longer to cook. This way, I can have steel-cut oats reheated every morning in about the same amount of time as it would take to make instant oats. I hope this video was helpful, and don't forget, if you want to see how I batch prep my oats in my Instant Pot, you can check out this video here. Or if you're wanting to change up your breakfast routine, you can watch this video to see 3 different whole grains that make a great breakfast porridge. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.